This is a bashful crowd. Welcome everyone to BUnow's midterm 2022 live stream election. My name is Richard Ganal. I'm the advisor of BUnow. We have a number of BUnow student editors. I'll let them introduce themselves. And we have some illustrious panelists here, faculty members from Bloomsburg University. So take it away, editors.
I am Mason Malloy. I'm the political editor at BUnow. I'm a junior. I'm a political science major.
Okay, my name is Olivia. I'm a senior media and journalism major. I am the treasurer and a co-social media runner. Yeah.
I'm Dylan Smith. I'm a freshman political science major, and I'm a news editor of BUnow.
Okay.
Okay. First question, go ahead, Olivia, take it away.
Okay. I know this was previous, but I kind of want to bring it back, the negative and positive ad campaigning of the election. Just some thoughts on it, if you think it hurts them, if it's worse, even if they're ahead in the polls and they might be doing some negative ad, like, do you think that hurts them? Do you think it might make them look better? Please ignore my dog. But yeah.
So hi, I'm David Heineman from the Department of Communication Studies. So one way of understanding this question is that traditionally negative ads are a bad idea unless you're losing. But when you're losing, they're a really good idea because they tend to siphon enthusiasm and ultimately some votes away from the candidate who's winning. We have seen a trend in recent years where the closer the election is, the more likely to have competing negative ads against each other, as opposed to maybe one going positive, one going negative. They do make a difference. I think the difference tends to be more in driving people away from the polls to vote than to, but that is a carefully planned strategy. So people typically don't like them. They're designed in part to make people not like them and keep them away from voting, which usually, depending on where that is going to benefit one candidate more than another.
And generally, people tend to remember bad things more than they remember positive things about people. That's one of the reasons why they are more effective. So I completely agree with what Dr. Heineman has said about about them working, about their the effect that they do turn people off. But at the same time, people do remember more from those negative ads than they do from those positive ads.
It also can have the effect of sometimes people aren't satisfied with either candidate, but if there's somebody they really don't like, they're voting not so much for my person, but I'm voting because of the other person I hate even more. And so I really don't want that person to get into office. And so if you want to think about what motivates people, if you have kind of touchy-feely campaign where everything's nice and wonderful, is that going to drive people to the polls? But if I'm really angry about something and I think that a certain candidate is going to be bad for the country or whatever, I'm probably going to be much more likely to come out and either vote against them or vote for my person because I'm so riled up about the issue.
So we often hear the lesser of two evils when voting for politics. How often do you think people vote for their preferred candidate, or just because they hate the other candidate more? Fantastic question, I guess.
That's a real stumper there, Dylan. Yeah, I mean, I'll take a first swing at this. If you look at comparative politics a little bit, let me just kind of start from that position. The United States has a binary choice, right? We have two parties. And so you really, you're doing a lot of strategic voting. If there are third parties, even third parties that you agree with or kind of you would vote for kind of from the heart, who you'd really align with, you typically don't do it because you see it as a wasted vote. So, a lot of voters in the United States are voting for their second choice out of necessity because they don't see that their first choice is going to win. That doesn't mean that Republicans and Democrats don't have a loyal base of support, even a large base of support. They certainly do. But with so few choices, it's sort of like the Domino's and Little Caesars of politics, you're kind of trapped into this binary choice. And these days, with polarization, I think there's far less cross over voting, swing voters, this type of thing. So I think if you're repelled by the other party, which many Americans are on both sides of the aisle, you're sort of left with one choice. And interestingly, I think you might suspect because of that turnout would be low, but turnout's been really, really high. And I think driven by all this negativity, and trying to make sure that your candidate, even if it's not your preferred candidate across 5 or 6 choices, but your preferred candidate in that binary choice, you want to protect that at least. So there's a lot of strategic voting going on, and there's a lot of making sure that that other candidate in this polarized political environment doesn't win. So that's kind of where I would start thinking about it.
I just want to just jump in if I can, Dylan. Here in Columbia County, you have a very interesting race that's going on tonight. It'll be decided tonight. We have a libertarian candidate, Tom Anderson, who I understand is going to be joining us later, I believe. Tom Anderson and a Republican candidate, Robert Ledbetter, and of course, unfortunately, we have the late Ed Giantasio, the Democratic candidate who unfortunately passed away yesterday. And I can speak to this knowing, because I'm part of the process, the Republican Party actually is split between Mr. Ledbetter and Mr. Anderson in this election. And so actually for me anyway, for our local election anyway, as a registered Republican, I'll go out on the limb. I mean, I told the whole world in my letter to the editor, I supported Mr. Anderson instead of my home party of the Republicans this time. So sometimes you do have unique circumstances where that libertarian does possibly have a chance to win, or that third party that Dr. Dorsler was talking about in the United States has a chance to win, and that's rare to win. But the stars just happen to line that way, today for Mr. Anderson. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment there, Neil. Later on in the program, we'll have Representative Millard as a guest, and it'll be interesting to see his take on that election. He didn't anoint anyone to follow up his seat, huh? Is that correct?
That's correct. My understanding he did not endorse anybody. Mr. Ledbetter, for whatever reason, chose to put a picture of him and Representative Millard, in his mailings, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Implying that Representative Millard, endorsed him for the race. So yes, that is very true. Yes.
Yeah.
I guess I just want to touch a little bit too. We mentioned voter turnout. Do you think it's become so high because a younger generation has turned 18 and is able to vote and has seen, the 2016 election, either got mad at either party and decided to vote, or do you think it's the media promoting it so much that they're getting to vote, or do you think it's just hatred for one party or the other and they just can do it and they go and vote? I guess how many people do you think actually know about politics rather than not and are voting for the voter turnout?
That question stumped everyone, Olivia.
Sorry, I was trying to offer some technical support at the same time I was listening to your question.
Yeah, I was also
about what is driving younger folks to the poll. Is that the question?
Yeah, kind of just like what's driving voter turnout. We've seen it be so high. Be so high these past few elections. And do we think it's hatred for the party? Do we think kids are just like 18-year-olds who just turned 18 are coming out maybe not really knowing what the politics is about and just going ahead and voting because they hate the other party? Or do we think the media is driving them to do it? Or do we think the younger generation knows what they're talking about?
I mean, I don't know that it's one of those things at the exclusion of any of the others. I think you probably answered your own question in some ways by
Yeah.
talking about all of these things working together. And I would say that the political climate just more broadly is probably hooking more people in. So, and with younger people in particular, I think an argument can be made that unlike with sort of like late 20th century media, where there was a lot more niche media for people in their late teens and early 20s than there is now, where you have a lot of options and kind of a constant stream of media at you. There's a lot more opportunity for political information to find you and to encourage you to vote than maybe would have been the case 20 or 30 years ago. Or even if that material is there, you're more likely to stumble across it given technology now. So I would say that, you know, as somebody who studies media, that's one answer, but all the other things you mentioned play a factor as well. I think that you have Gen Z, not to group everyone in that same category, but which is in every measure I've seen, much more politically engaged and invested in politics than the millennials before them, for example, right? Or even the generation before that. So there is a generational shift. I think some of that is fostered in part by technology. We're also in a very different political climate than we've had, so it's not really comparing apples to apples in that sense. But you know, that's my stab at your question anyway. Sorry for making you repeat it.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I think with this election, you know, typically midterm elections have lower turnout than the presidential elections. And so it's really a matter of who can motivate their people perhaps more, you know, Republicans, Democrats, what have you, and what issues, you know, are people motivated on? Are people, and that might take a few days to kind of suss out once all the results get tabulated and the exit polls get conducted, et cetera. But are people voting primarily about abortion or inflation or this or that issue? And so which group of voters on whatever the issue is, who are more motivated? You know, typically the ruling party loses some seats, and you know, that's kind of a foregone conclusion, but how much are they going to lose, you know, and what's going to be the result of it? That's kind of the question on the turnout.
Yeah, I think along with that, there is kind of a sense of urgency out there. And I don't think this is just hyperbole, part of the campaign strategies, maybe a little bit, but I think you hear a lot of pundits and people, political scientists and others, you know, talking about the implications of this election on a number of different issues. And I think whether it's abortion rights or the economy or the future of democracy in America or climate change, we're not in a period in our political history where it's kind of business as usual, status quo, sort of a lull in the issues. You know, we are facing some tremendous challenges ahead of us, and I think, yeah, younger people are tuned into that, maybe more so than older folks, and really it's energizing them around the issues that I mentioned. So yeah, that's what I see.
Yeah, and can I jump in real quick? So I'll defer to my poli-sci colleagues. They probably have a better sense of this. But am I remembering correctly that the prior midterm saw a noticeable peak in or growth in younger voters compared to prior midterms? Is it sort of continued in the 2018 election? I'm not sure if I'm remembering that correctly, so I don't know if you remember or not.
For the midterm, I'm not sure, sort of outside my realm of expertise, but I think in the last couple of elections, certainly this 2020 election, there was a very high turnout, right? And I think the expectations are that this midterm will be potentially historic for a midterm election. Just all the early voting that's happened, the mail-in and absentee already has what we have 30 million, 35 million votes cast already, just mail-in absentee together. So it's a huge number, and yeah, I mean, I think that's just we'll have to see what the exit polls say and kind of follow the news a little bit later once we get a better sense of this. But that's where the indications are leading right now.
Yeah, I want to welcome two new guests we have on our Zoom meeting here. First of all, we have Amanda Waldman, Bloom alum. I won't ask what year you graduated in, Amanda. We'll refer people to your campaign literature. Now, you're a candidate in the Congressional District number 9, am I correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. And then Dan Noor, office holder himself, former mayor of Bloomsburg, and in charge of government relations at Bloomsburg University. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yeah, good to have you. Amanda, what's going on out there? We're talking about voter turnout and the energy of the young voters. Anything you can report to us from the election?
Turnout is at a record high everywhere. I was in Lycoming County, Sullivan, Bradford, Susquehanna, Luzerne, Schuylkill. I just left Northumberland. I'm currently in Columbia. I'm on my way back to Lycoming, in Milton. So I was really trying to get back to Bloomsburg, but I'm just not going to make it. The district's entirely too big. Everyone is in a really good mood. I can say that. I've had quite a few conversations with Republicans, which for a Democratic candidate is pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone is just fired up. And the one thing that I heard the most is that they're all ready for a change. So
that's an interesting question. Change from what to what?
I didn't go into that with them. I just thanked them for showing up, thanked them for participating. I got to talk to a lot of very small children, ones, who obviously aren't voting, and letting them know that I think they're superheroes of the future and that their vote is going to save our country down the line. So usually get some blushing faces and smiles and happy parents. So
how does that compare, Dan, to your campaign experiences?
Well, I didn't run for Congress. That's a pretty big district.
It's just little. It's just little.
I respect that a lot because I remember, I served as mayor in Bloomsburg for 2 terms, and when I ran for state representative a decade ago at this point, it felt like a big leap to go from the town of Bloomsburg to a district that covered most of Columbia County. That was a lot of door knocking. So I just have a lot of appreciation for anyone that puts themselves out there, because I know the time sink it is, and what it does to your schedule and your time with your family.
Yeah. True.
And what is time? I don't know.
I know.
What
right?
is time? What is this concept you speak of?
I don't know if there's any philosophy or math faculty in the room to answer that.
That's a metaphysical question, isn't it?
Thank you for running. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, it certainly takes a lot of courage. And when you think 10 years ago, Dan, we won't ask your age, but I remember you speaking to some of my students. You were a young candidate.
Yeah, it was. I really consider myself fortunate that people gave me the chance at such a young age. But it's also one of the reasons I love that squeaking is my dog. Sorry.
That's all right.
It's also a reason why I love what I do now with the university, because I can really hopefully encourage students, to get out there and get involved too, and not feel like they have to wait for some magical moment where they're completely ready, because that never comes. I was 19 when I ran for town council and 21 when I first ran for mayor. And I'm 37 now. So I don't say that in any kind of, ego way. It's actually, I look back and think, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that this community gave a young kid that chance, because it really taught me a lot and gave me a lot of experience that hopefully I still use in this area today.
Well, educate us, Amanda. Is this your first election?
This is my second.
Second,
So
okay.
2 years ago, I ran for a state.
I'm losing Amanda, but I can't tell if that's me or her.
I think it's a her connection there. Yeah.
Lycoming County in a district that was at least 4-1 Republican to Democrat. I waited until, I believe, 2 days before the petition signing period started, with all kinds of messages. So it's probably depleting my bandwidth.
Yeah, you're coming in a little a week there. Yeah, well, having followed the campaigns for a long time, I'm a little older than Dan. The only office I ever ran for was a Republican committeeman in Richwood Township in Missouri. And it seemed like politics at that time was much more tame than it is today. Anyone want to address that? It seems like it's almost a blood sport.
Lycoming County for a House seat 2 years ago was defeated by
Amanda, you're coming in almost too slow to hear. Pick up anything there on you. Yeah. So what do you all think? The campaign pundits, the observers, has the tone of campaign changed that much?
Okay, I apologize for that. I can take a stab at it. It's, it's so hard to say. I do think that it wasn't that long ago. I mean, I served as mayor from 2008 to 2013, and even then, social media, I mean, it obviously was there, but it was not the force sort of all consuming that it is today. And I think that has definitely driven people into camps a little more than I dealt with even that short time ago.
How about the rest of you? I would have to agree with Dan there. It seems like social media is the, I don't want to use the metaphor elephant in the room, and I don't want to use donkey in the room, but maybe we could say the gorilla in the room. Certainly social media seems to have accelerated all sorts of messages and conflicts and truths and untruths. Any comments on that? What we might do to rein that in, or should we rein it in? Should we sort of just give it free rein and let it take us where it will?
I mean, I think it's, you definitely can construct your own bubble with social media based on who you follow, which platforms you choose to go on, which candidates or just average people you choose to engage with or not. The social platforms learn what content gets you excited, and they tailor then recommendations to you based on what you've seen before, what you've interacted with before, etc. So it maybe seems more polarizing because you get locked into your own little bubble and sphere, and you hear people like you, and you don't hear from perhaps people from outside views, or if you do, you block them, you mute them, you you unfollow them, what have you. It's just easier to craft a specific media stream of content that's tailored to you.
I agree with the social media, but we also have candidates like obviously most recently Donald Trump, right? I think he's the first major presidential candidate to really be in your face, in the face of his primary opponents in the general election. Very we're doing things differently. He fights back. And so I think that is part of it, that we have our national figures. Like I said, I think President Trump is a great example of kind of opening the floodgates to this, nastiness that you can be to each other, calling each other names. I mean, they've done it before a lot of times in private, but Trump actually, was very public about his criticism of people and really in their face, and bring along social media where people are, they've chosen their candidate, they have their platform, and they can follow these people that they admire. And I think that President Trump was very instrumental in basically saying, okay, let's have gloves off, with our politics. And I'm not saying President Trump's the first one, but I think that he made a significant stride, towards that, for setting the tone for our combative politics that we have today.
So,
Any
Mr.
comments
Noor,
on-
how do you, sorry, you gonna go?
No, go ahead, Dylan. Yeah.
Epic, all right. So how do you see that your age impacting your candidacy, and how do you see that going forward impacting future elections?
Yeah, so just the context in Bloomsburg's town council, which was the first race I ran in 2005, there were 6 candidates for 3 spots. So it's not a head-to-head. It's the top 3 candidates win. There were 3 open seats. I'll be honest, I went into it with, some friends. We had kind of a joined group from University Democrats and college Republicans and the Political Science Student Association. And then I was 19. I didn't really think I stood a chance, to be honest. I thought my age was gonna kill me. But I thought this would be a fun experience just to run and get out in the community. And I did want to have a student on town council at the time. But what I found was that as I just did the raw work of going door to door and asking for people's votes, it's actually something a lot of candidates don't do. It's just, hey, I'd like your vote. I had people who looked at me and said, I think you are too young, but I can't remember the last time my council member came to my door or talked to me about a couple issues or just even asked for my support. And I ended up not just winning, but being the top vote getter of 6. So again, I think for going into it, my age could have been a factor, but I showed the willingness to just get out there and meet people and ask them for their support and talk to them about what I thought we could do better as a town. And I think that it's not that my age wasn't a factor, but I think it helped them get beyond my age.
Do you see more people like that going forward in elections, kind of like how you are a very young candidate? Do you see that going forward as like a theme or a new trend?
It's hard to say. It's so there's a part of me that's actually kind of sad that no student has really run since. I wish we had, more of our students involved, but I also get that it's a huge commitment. I mean, it's a 4-year term and it's not a full-time job. Like, you get a little stipend. So it's a big commitment. And I think if young people are genuinely interested in doing it, I think that for me, it was a wonderful thing. But I also think that maybe the ugliness of our politics right now is a big turnoff, and people are just saying, why would I want to step foot into that? And I had to be honest. I love what I do for the university with community and government relations. So it was never really a question in my mind that I was going to stick where I'm at. But, I had a few people ask when Rep Millard retired, they said, "God, you got closest to defeating him in 2012. Are you thinking of running now that he's retiring?" And even me, I look at it and I think, that's a turnoff. Just how rambunctious almost seems soft, compared to what it is right
exactly.
now. So
almost eviscerating. Mm-hmm.
I think you see that in other professions too. Seems like fewer people want to be teachers. That the environment in the schools, the toxicity around school politics, I'm sure COVID had something to do with that. But I think it's a broader problem that the politicization, the polarization has seeped into our everyday lives, into certain professions, and they're no longer as attractive as they used to be. And yeah, if you're a young person and you've got, your whole life ahead of you and different career options, maybe this is not one that you would choose. The burnout rate and all of the, being in the spotlight all the time, or just the pressure placed upon you. I mean, there are probably better options out there. I can completely understand that from their perspective. I was also going to say, it's interesting to think about the, the candidates running now, especially at the top of tickets. I mean, they're very old, even compared to past elections, especially at the top of the ticket. If, for example, Biden and Trump were to run in 2024, I mean, we're talking about this gerontocracy of old candidates who, and I think that's part of the frustration. Maybe it's driving some of the turnout among younger voters is that they don't want to turn over power very willingly. And when people talk about wanting change, that was a comment made earlier. Maybe that's something Amanda said, just going around and hearing from a lot of people, I want change. I think that's part of it, that younger people still don't have as much of a voice as they'd like, given who is in the positions of power.
With the trying to make change, we have to get people to stop electing the same people over and over again and expecting different results. If we really want to see change, we need to empower each other to be the change and to make the change. And I don't see a lot of empowerment. I'm not a big party candidate. I tend to poke bears. It's kind of what I'm known for. I've always been like this. I never wanted anything to do with politics when I was younger, but it seems that my entire career path gave me the skills I would need to do this. And that's what I've heard most is, how do I get that? How do I make the change? How do I get this ability? How do I help others see that they have a voice and they can be the change? So how do we get there? And Dan, it's amazing that you started so early and so young. I actually remember you. I was still a student at Bloom when you ran, and I remember this. So yeah, I put myself through college. I ended up not graduating until 2010. So I'm not giving away my age. Although, Peter, I did misunderstand what you meant by top of the ticket. I thought you meant this ticket because Josh Shapiro is only a couple years older than me. And I was like, now I'm feeling really old.
Yeah, I encourage, as ugly as it is, I really encourage our students and young people in general not to wait, because I found, and Amanda, having gone through this once, I don't know, I found that there's really no downside. I mean, a loss is hard no matter what. I lost in 2012 when I ran for state rep, and I put a lot of time and effort and sweat into it, and it's hard. I didn't enjoy losing, but in the long run, there wasn't a downside. I spent a year making some incredible connections throughout the county that, in many ways, I didn't know it at the time, propelled my career path to where it is now. I couldn't be doing what I do now and interacting with at the state level if I didn't have that experience. So even if young people think, well, this might not go my way, what if I lose? It's like, it's gonna be worth it. I really do believe that.
Mhm.
Well, and when you ask that question, what if I lose? You have to actually stop and answer yourself. What if I lose? Okay, I go back to my life. Sweet. And then I understand what this thing called time is again. Awesome. It's really not, it's nothing that's going to destroy your life. At least not that I've experienced. And I figured, you know, hey, I lost huge.
You're starting to cut out there, Amanda. Yeah. But I want to come back to a point Neil made earlier in regards to Donald Trump saying, you know, he fought back. Many people say rather than fighting back,
So it's go big or go home. Let's jump into the congressional.
he threw the first punch, you know,
Try
you
this
could
one
almost say. And not only did he throw the first punch, he punched downward. When you think about that 2016 election and the Gold Star parents, you think about the treatment of Trump to John McCain. And there was sort of, I think, a huge shift in terms of the climate, campaign climate, that the media wasn't ready for, the other candidates weren't ready for. And social media was just at the right time where social media was ready to propel this whole new model of campaigning. And I think historically we'll look back and Trump was really a trendsetter in the sense of campaigning. He took us, I'm not sure down the right path, but down a different path. And it's taken people some time to figure out just how to handle that from the media's perspective. We don't know how to handle a guy like that in 2016 and other candidates. Anyone want to respond to that? Do we see sort of like clones to that campaign culture?
I got to spend time talking to the Mastriano people today. They're at every polling location.
Oh.
They took Trump to a whole new level. Regarding the media and trying to figure out how to handle it, I did get to audit a few classes with Dr. Brash at Bloomsburg. And I expect so much more from people who call themselves journalists. If you want to be some sensationalist, that's fine. If you call yourself a journalist, I expect to hear no bias out of your mouth. I expect to not hear only a part of a story from one side. I didn't get to take the actual classes and get graded, but I really took everything I learned in those classes to heart. And the people, just, you know, the readers and the watchers, we need to start engaging and pushing back when we see them only presenting a tiny piece. And right now, this campaign, a lot of candidates have been trying to get our volunteers to write letters to the editor. When they see something, they're going to see it before the candidate. We need you to write that letter to the editor, to write into the station, to blast it all over social media when they're being dishonest or when they're only presenting a tiny piece. That, I think, is what we're really missing now, and how Trump was able to change the game so much and really kind of destroy our faith. I don't know if that's just my trying to look through rose-colored glasses at it and how you fix it. I would love to hear what anyone else has to say about it. It's something that's really been bothering me for a long time.
Yeah, I'd certainly like to later on in the show, Amanda, if you could give us some first-person experiences on what's going on there at the polling places. That'd be interesting. Want to welcome the retiring state rep from our district. Representative David Millard. Can you hear us, David? He's in the process of signing on. He's been a guest at BUnow's live stream before, so we'll hear him. And then Dan, if there's any sort of campaign residuals from 10 years ago you'd like to hash out, have at it at this time, because our Representative Millard is stepping down. How long has he been our representative? It seems like forever from my perspective.
He can correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say about 2004 is when he became our state representative.
Yeah. Welcome, Representative Millard.
Well, it was a long pathway to get here, but wow, I'm glad to be able to join you. And I just heard Dan's comment there. 2004 is when I became a state representative.
Yeah. Now, when you say a long way to get here, Representative, are you referring to the years campaigning or just the few minutes getting onto the site?
Yeah, the technology trying to get on. As you know, I started a good 40 minutes ago, but.
Well, we're working out some of the bugs, that's for sure. But I think by the next time that the election rolls around, we should have things worked out. We've been talking about the campaign climate and how it might have changed over the time that you were a candidate. And specifically, I made some references to this election here in your district. What sort of comments would you like to make in those areas?
Well, nationally, I think over the years, we've seen it become very polarized. There's no question about it. You know, when the main discussion on television is how many seats and how close it is for one party or another to take control, I think that sends a clear message that I don't think there's an inability to work together. I think they can work together, but I think that it sends a message that they're not working together. Mm-hmm. You know, I always say that individuals that are elected from either the extreme on the left or the extreme on the right do no service to the people that they represent, because you have to work together. No matter what party you are, you must work together for the betterment of, in my case, the Commonwealth, or for your constituents. And if you've got someone who draws a line in the sand and simply will not cross it, then that's part of polarization. You're not going to advance forward with anything. And that's a shame, because I grew up in an environment, I believe, where, you know, the members of both parties, and I know there's other parties as well, but we'll restrict this to Democrat and Republican, that they were able to work together, that they were able to do budgets on time, budgets ahead of time, and, you know, get meaningful legislation passed. And sadly, you know, again, at the national level, I think that element of wanting to work together, of being able to work together, somehow got pushed to the side. And it's very sad, because ultimately we all have a stake in it. And, you know, think of all the great things that could be done. This country is a great country, and could even be better if we work together and be understanding of each other. Now, in Pennsylvania, we do work together. We are getting some things done. We have our moments, I will admit that. And I'm not too keen on all the executive, you know, decisions that are coming out of Washington or Harrisburg that circumvent the legislative process. There's 3 levels of government, as you know, and I'm part of one of them. And we all like to, you know, be very protective of what our role is. And when that role sometimes is usurped, it doesn't sit very well. And what does that do going forward? Well, it creates problems and bad feelings. And then you have to overcome that hurdle. And that's a major hurdle to overcome to move forward. So understand the role and try to work together.
Anyone want to respond to that, or?
Just that it's a good, as down as we can sometimes get about the state of our politics. It's, you know, it's a good point. There's a lot. It's easy to forget or not even realize there's actually a lot that happens under the surface that is bipartisan. I know just from the university's standpoint, we had real bipartisan support. We have a Republican Senate, Republican House in Pennsylvania, and a Democratic governor, but they came together and met our pretty dramatically increased funding for higher education for the state schools this year, and that's a bipartisan win. And there's some small bills too that have had almost unanimous support on a bill recently the other week that makes our hiring process for campus police officers a lot more efficient and streamlined, and will allow us to fill those more easily. So, there are things that don't always get the YouTube clip, but they're important. And Representative, before you came on, we were talking a little bit about some of my background and when I ran in 2012. But one thing I'll always remember is the night of the election, after the results were in, I was still mayor, you were still state rep, and we talked to each other on the phone and said, we still have a lot of work to get done together. And that's what you do. You bury the hatchet, you move on. And I've been happy that we've been able to do a lot of work together over the past decade.
No, absolutely. And we have done a lot of things together. And, I feel that in our heart, we both have the community in mind. And I think that's important. And, I served with the 202 other members. And although we may differ on things, I always say, what do we have in common? Well, we have in common that we want to represent our area to the best of our ability. And how do we craft that path forward? A lot of times it comes down to funding. Some things are funded statewide, and other things are funds for individual projects locally. 203 localies in the House of Representatives. So I don't want to say there's horse trading or anything, there isn't, but just a general understanding of how important something is and what it will mean in that community. And I think that once you understand that creates the spirit of wanting to work together and for the common good of the Commonwealth.
Now we want to welcome several other guests. Jared Garrison is with us. He's the student leader of the Campus Democrats. There you are. Welcome to the show. And Eliza Nevis, editor-in-chief of BUnow, and Maddie Tewksbury. So just jump right in if you have any questions of anyone, like to hear it. Jared, have you been out there working the polls today?
Yeah, and I see here we have somebody very special. I hear he taught Drew Brees back when he was at Purdue. Mr. Strine.
Yeah, I try to keep that quiet, Jared. But yes, I did teach Drew Brees. I am the reason why he made it to the NFL and won the Super Bowl and was Super Bowl MVP.
And donated the naming rights to our football stadium.
Oh, that was Jory Evans.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but there's an interesting connection there because Jory Evans was the lineman for Drew Brees when they both played this for the Saints together.
Oh, okay.
So
Well,
Jory
that
and Drew were on the same team, but yeah, no, Drew had me for U.S. government in the summer of 2000.
And how about Jory?
No, never had him for class. Never had him for class. Yeah. No, I just take credit for Drew.
That's enough. Well, Jared, tell us what the camp polls were like today.
Well, it's just a lot of college students, honestly. Everything. I think there was a lot of first-time voters, to be honest. There was a lot of people just asking, like, if they needed ID and all that, which you do if you're voting for the first time. Maybe there could have been more signs up because me and Mason Kay from the College Republicans, we had to direct a lot of people to the actual voting room. But yeah, otherwise it didn't seem like anything abnormal, I suppose. I think we saw a lot more people than we were expecting, though, so that's good.
So the turnout was strong.
Yep.
Yeah, that's.
Can I interject one thing?
Sure, go right ahead.
The polls are closed. We survived another election day. Congratulations, everyone.
Give a little reaction here. Yeah, at least this far on the Now the poll, we still have another several hours before it's closed on a national basis, but it's nice to see the polls rolling across. Although I understand we just had a court decision that they'll be counting, accepting ballots that are returned as late as November 14th. Any reaction to that?
I did not hear that, but I do know Luzerne County is still voting. They had a court decision this afternoon. They will be voting until 10 p.m. tonight. So not everyone is closed, but most of the state of Pennsylvania just closed. Luzerne County did not print enough paper ballots for all of the voters. So.
How do you make that kind of mistake?
Well, this is the second cycle in a row, so I'm not really sure. But I had a lot of really, really angry voters because they didn't have a ballot and had to wait and had to come back. And I had to go to a court so that we could remain open past 8 p.m. Matt Cartwright and I share Luzerne County, so I don't know how you make that mistake.
Dylan, you first reported on that for BUnow. Anything you want to add to that discussion about Luzerne's ballot shortage?
Yeah, well, I heard about it was they ran out of paper ballot or paper for the machines pretty early in the morning due to an overflux of people. They said it was a quote perfect storm of problems which resulted in the loss of paper. And they were turning away people because they didn't have enough products to really have them vote properly. And told them to come back. And Luzerne County is a county that voted about 56% for Trump and about 43% for Biden, with about 150,000 overall voters. So it is a pretty big county in the election. So it being delayed would definitely affect the lead we're going to see.
Yeah, I haven't heard about the court decision on accepting to the 14th. I will say that I think, it doesn't take a lot of I'm in a nonpartisan position for the university, but it doesn't take a lot of Googling to see that I ran as a Democrat. And I know that a lot of Democratic candidates have pushed mail-in voting, and I think there's a lot of great benefits that come from it, but I do think we have to figure out the process a little better. I think it's important that we have, in as many cases as possible, a result on election night or as close to it as we can, just for that stability of government and continuity. And the longer these races drag out and it's the longer uncertainty drags out, I think that it allows a force like we saw in 2020 to start to question the results. And I do think we have a lot of work to do at the elected official level to figure out, okay, if we're going to have a mail-in voting process, how do we make it so that we get these results, quickly and accurately on election night?
And you bring up a very good point there, Dan. I spoke with my brother who lives in North Carolina, and they have a need to vote early. There's a member of their household that simply cannot wait in a long line to go vote. So they take advantage of voting early. And when they go to vote early, I think I'm just going to wing this and say it's 10 days or 2 weeks prior to it. It's quite an advance that allows them to vote early. So they go to a polling place, a designated place, and they produce an ID for each of them, and they vote. And those votes are secure. They're secured in a machine that is not unlocked until election day. But when that machine is unlocked, it's almost instantaneous that whoever voted early, those votes are tallied. There's a tally available that is provided at the end of the voting day. And I've always thought that here in Pennsylvania, a couple things, that early voting, I think, would be the key to it, where you have to produce a valid ID. And most certainly, you could have a couple balloting machines, voting machines, in a very secured location. Could have them at the courthouse, right at the voter reg section, and you know that there's security there. You know that the courthouse is locked at night. It's all secure. Nobody's going to mess with it. But I think that accomplishes two things. I think that it will cut down on the lines. It will allow people that perhaps have a disability that cannot wait in line early access to go vote, and it requires an ID. So that provides for a valid vote, one person, one vote. So I think what it does, it answers a lot of concerns, and it takes away some of the issues and the problems. It doesn't solve everything, but I think it helps. I think it's a giant step forward. And if the question of paper ballots is a real concern, I voted paper ballot. You have to request them early on, and we didn't really know what COVID would be. And I thought, well, I'll request a paper ballot, mail-in ballot, no excuse ballot. And it was very simple. The instructions were made very clear. And I think that, Matt Rapowski and our voter office here in Columbia County, we're very fortunate. He's very passionate about what he wants to accomplish as far as integrity in voting, and he does it. And, my hat's off to him. Now you get into bigger areas where there's a larger population. I think early voting eases some of it. And I think that, one of the answers is if you've got 900 people voting in one voting precinct and 60 in another, in a very rural area, maybe we need to look at the one with 900 and try to expand it, offer more machines or more personnel, whatever it takes to accomplish exactly what you said. We ought to have results election night, and I think it would go a long way toward accomplishing that.
Mhm.
Great idea.
Yeah. I want to welcome Mason Kay. Hi, Mason. You're the student leader of the Campus Republicans. And can you tell us a little bit about your experience today in the polls?
Yeah, so I was exit polling with Jared Garrison today. You got to have a fair balance of ideology there. It was pretty nice. There was a lot of friendly students where we were taking surveys. Everyone seemed like very cordial and very pleasant to talk to.
Yeah, great.
Nobody was extreme or rude or anything. It's a very relieving sight, especially when regarding politics.
Mm-hmm. So if you two are conducting exit polls, can you tell us what you found? What sort of projections can you make in terms of the level of student output and their candidate choices?
Well, I don't know about you, Mason, but I didn't tend to look at them all that much just because we didn't really have the time. And also, I don't know if that's really the most ethical thing. I'm sure if you ask Dr. Deffenderfer, she might be able to get you the results on them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I noticed that, I didn't look at any of the actual surveys themselves or any of that. But I definitely saw enthusiasm from a lot of voters. They seemed very interested in voting and went out of their way to vote. So that's pretty exciting. Good turnout.
So you were collecting data with you had them fill out a paper survey. You didn't ask them the question. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in here. First of all, it's refreshing to hear about the voter turnout. We love to see that our young voters are involved. We kind of touched on this earlier about social media and the influence it has had on this election. But I want to ask you guys, how do you think social media has really played into this election? To be more specific, do you think our young voters are getting more like accurate or inaccurate like information fed to them rather than going out and like learning through credited news sources and stuff like that?
Good question.
Touch on that. I would say that I feel like students will get their information from wherever they get it from. I can't really attest to where they would get it from, but they definitely feel strongly about voting, and in particular who they're voting for. They definitely have their stances, and it's not very easy to shake them from that. They've dug their roots in and they're not moving.
So that party choice decision's made early, and you think it's unshakable.
I would say so.
So how do you grow your party then? Do you strategize for the middle, the undecided? Do you target all your efforts to your base? If you can't change minds, Representative Millard was talking about the whole basis of government is compromise, working together. If the feelings are so strong, how do you bring people together on those kind of divisive issues?
If I may, I think I agree with Mason in that the party choice kind of thing is made really early on, especially with like how young people are like socialized. A lot of people will tend to go to the same party that their parents were. So like if you had Republican parents, you'll be a Republican most likely. But I feel like a lot of progress can be made about like single issues, sort of changing people's minds around single issues. Say, if you can change someone's mind about like their stance on abortion or their stance on like gun rights or something, I feel like that can be an opportunity to bring people together, or at least like try to get them to maybe see the other side from a different perspective. But that's just me.
If I can say something, I feel as if it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, I feel like having a strong opinion on something might not be it might be viewed by some people who disagree as like a bad thing, but you know, students who are very firm in their belief, whether it's right or left, or even in the middle, it could be viewed as a good thing, because I mean, it means students are informing themselves through the right, through their, in their minds, the right news sources. So at least they're informed. So, you know, we can take that as we will.
Yeah,
Would you
that's
two say
interesting.
that? Oh, sorry, you can go.
Go ahead, Dylan.
All right. So would you two say that people vote for policy or candidates as their primary choice?
I've seen policy being what people care about most. A lot of people, if I'm allowed to say names, I would say a lot of people have been both pushed towards and against. Since I'm the president of the College Republicans, I've noticed people who typically vote Republican but can't stand Oz. I've seen people, you know, typically vote Democrat, support Oz, and it's simply based off of what policy they exactly support.
Just a quick interjection. Wisconsin is reporting that they have seen a youth increase of 360% since 2018 for the midterms. And this is something I want to ask Jared and Mason specifically. How have you seen more students interested in your respective clubs? Like compared to, let's say, even 2 years ago, are you having more people join the young Republicans and the young and call it Democrats? Or is it about the same? Is it even less? Like compared to just when COVID hit?
Well, I guess I'll start with that. With the Democrats, it's actually been hard to, I guess, keep people around, at least for our club. A lot of our members aren't exactly the most active, so it's hard to retain people, but it's not hard to exactly like get them to come to a single meeting, I suppose. I've been a part of many different clubs, and I've tried to do things a little bit differently with the Democrat Club. But while it is true that there are significantly more Democrats on campus, I just feel like a lot of those people who would be willing to like do stuff with the Democrats Club, they just have so much other stuff going on. It's hard to keep them around when we have nothing significant to really put them towards, but hopefully that can change in the future.
I can touch on that and say, I mean, the College Republicans Club, I feel has been a stark contrast to the University Democrats. And I mean, no offense by saying that, but the College Republicans, we average at our meetings, which are every other week, between 10 to 20 students. So, I mean, I feel like we've been pretty successful getting more members and getting our name out there some more.
Can you guys give a little explanation of like what you guys do year round while there's not like election going on?
I can take that and just say, the College Republicans, we typically, in our meetings, we start off by addressing the old business, discussing what is going to happen, what events we have coming up. It's been very busy the past, I would say, year with primaries and now the general election. But in off years, we have just topics that we'll discuss, usually going for topics that are not going to make the club an echo chamber. After all, it's the College Republicans. So you have mostly conservative viewpoints or economically liberal viewpoints. So we often go for something that's more controversial within the party and within the conservative stance. So, let's discuss those kind of things. But during election years and semesters before primaries, we'll have events that we'll go to and stuff like that.
How's that contrast to your meetings, Jared? Oh, go ahead, Mason. Go ahead.
Mine was another topic, so Jared, go.
Yeah, so our meetings, they're actually similar to what Mason described. We just talk about different topics, about things that are going on. A lot of us help out with like the local Democratic committee. I know I specifically helped out with selling fudge and Democratic merchandise over at the Bloomsburg Fair. That was organized at one of our meetings. We had some candidates come in and just talk with us. Amanda Waldman, she came to a meeting. Mr. Giantasio, may he rest in peace. He came to one of our meetings and also talked with us, and that was nice. So yeah, just a lot of stuff like that. We've also talked a lot about doing like voter registration events and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Real quick side note, the first Gen Z member of Congress has been elected. Maxwell Frost out of Florida, 25 years old.
This is this evening? You're
This
reporting
evening.
this?
Yep.
What ticket did he run on?
He was a Democrat out of Florida's, scroll down so I can see it. 10th district. He's a Democrat of the 10th district.
Ah,
He ran on a very liberal campaign of social justice activism and gun reform.
And that's where now, Mason?
Florida 10th district. It's a blue area around Orlando.
Yeah, we had a lengthy discussion earlier on in the evening about how to attract young people to running for offices. Do you all talk about that in your student organizations? Any chance any of you will be filing for an office soon?
Well, just on that topic, I don't think it's discussed that much, but I will just say as a young person, especially from an area around here, like especially like a student of like going to a state school and all that, it can seem really intimidating to like run for office at such a young age because like there's this expectation, I feel like, that you need to have been like a straight A student who went to Harvard or something to even have a shot and also you need to gain funding, you need to gain the trust of the party, things like that. So I think it's really impressive that somebody who is like that young got elected, and I hope he does well, but I don't think you're going to see, I think that's going to be a rare occurrence, people getting elected that young. And also, I just don't think voters really expect someone that young to even run in the first place, and they'll be turned off by that. They would probably expect somebody to be at least like in their late 30s to run for an office.
Well, I would mention to you that the first time I ran for the position that I hold was in 1978, 25 years old. Ran against Ted Steuben, who at that point was running for a second term in office. And I got but always remained active in the party, working behind the scenes, if you will, helping others to get elected at various county positions. And, the spark was always within me to run. And I tried to keep that alive and build network long before social media, I might add, but the old shoe leather effort. But and it paid off, obviously.
Yeah.
I've never gone unchallenged when I ran for election. So every election I've been in, I've had one or two challengers. And I think that I always welcomed it. Is it nice to have an election without one? Well, yeah, it's nice. I wouldn't know how nice that would be because it never happened. But I think that what it does is that with all of the comments that have just recently been offered here, that it's conversations that are to be held, that when you have opponents, that obviously there are conversations and positions that need to be clarified and publicized. And I think that's a good thing. When you share information of what your stance on something is, I think that what that does is that clarifies it for, the public, that you're helping them to make a decision. You don't know what decision they'll make, obviously, but hopefully they'll agree with you what your, point of view is on a couple topics. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting point there, Representative Millard. And Dan Noor, who was here earlier, ran for, I guess his first election, he said, was at 19 years old, ran for town council, and became mayor at just a few years older than that. So, but it is a great leap forward to make that sort of commitment.
Well, it is. And of all the individuals that ran against me, and I have respected each and every one of them, Dan had my utmost respect, because here we are talking on BUnow with a lot of young people compared to my age, obviously, but Dan had a grasp for the issues, and he was very knowledgeable. And I think that a lot of our young people should never be underestimated with the qualifications that they have, and their knowledge on topics, and the fact that they can do a good job. And my advice is stay active, stay interested, and my goodness, by all means, when you feel the time is right to make a difference by running for office, do it.
Yeah, and there's a number of very interesting historical cases. Bill Clinton, George Wallace, Abraham Lincoln, all making that decision at a very young age that they're going to run for office. You probably maybe remember the picture of Bill Clinton as, I guess, a high school student in Washington, D.C., shaking hands with John Kennedy. I remember reading about George Wallace making 3x5 cards at a very young age of everyone in his district. And he was deliberately methodical about going for that office. And so if you get the bug early, you can really work on that. I want to welcome CJ DeLeo. Hello, CJ.
Hey, Dr. Knoll.
Yeah. CJ's a BU alum. He's a BUnow editor. He's a media mogul in his own right, and a farmer, can I say a Bernie Sanders supporter?
That's a fair characterization.
What would you like to share with us about tonight's election? We're just sort of talking politics here.
Well, I've been trying to watch in and out and watch a few other election coverage sources throughout the night. I will say I don't currently live in Pennsylvania, so I might not have the most on the ground take for Fetterman versus Oz. It's honestly one of the probably most nail biting elections this season, just from what I've seen so far. I'm anxious to see what you guys all think being on the ground. From the brief moments I've been in PA over the past year, it seems like there's a lot more support for Fetterman, but it could still go anyway based on what I'm seeing in the polls.
Now, what state do you live in now, CJ?
I live in New Jersey, so I'm about an hour from the PA border. I still own property in Stroudsburg, so I'm out that way every once in a while, but
Yeah, well, let's talk returns right now. Anyone have a feel for the Oz Fetterman race, the Mastriano Shapiro race? Anybody want to make any odds right now?
So I will say I've got the live results in front of me for Senate. Fetterman's got a huge lead over Oz right now, but there's only 5% reporting. There's still no data out of Philadelphia, so that's ultimately going to make or break the election, from what I can tell. But right now Fetterman's up 83%, 237,000 votes to Oz's 40,000. Again, very early on still, so that's really not the best indicator of who's actually going to win this thing.
I will say though,
quick jump in on the Fetterman Oz, but also the Shapiro race, because the Shapiro race is a lot more headed for Shapiro. I think what was the last one? 15%.
I don't know what the exact number is, but yeah, Shapiro.
It was a massive lead.
His race close at this point.
But currently, we see around a 3%. The difference. There's just Shapiro voters went for Oz over Fetterman.
Right.
In his current moment.
Yeah.
So you're saying what, Mason? That the governor's race is much tighter than the senator race?
No, the Senate race is tighter, and it's showing that because Shapiro's winning by more than currently, with the 5% in. But there's a 3% difference. So will Shapiro's higher odds against Mastriano, will that actually drag Fetterman over the line? Because Fetterman has faltered over the last few weeks.
It's, I think, a good question. Anytime I look at these individual races, I think you have to look at two things when you're looking at any given candidate. You have to look at the candidate themselves, their personality, their affectations, their qualities, their, anything that might come off as off-putting to voters. Then you have to look at their policy positions, right? Like Shapiro and Fetterman are more or less aligned, right? They're both, sort of progressive-ish Democrats. But when it comes to personality, Fetterman's got the sort of old school blue collar, straight out of Western Pennsylvania vibe going on.
He's a professional wrestler incarnate.
He screams like average Pennsylvanian, right? So
he looks like that guy that all those old people talk about. Like, I know a guy this big once.
Right. Yeah. So, and to me that's appealing. I'm sure to a lot of his supporters that's appealing. But a lot of people still love the idea of a traditional politician, which is what Oz sort of is, like very clean cut, very simple, very, I do think the fact that Fetterman is getting over a stroke, and you saw sort of a faltered performance both with some individual interviews and his debate performance against Oz, that's going to work against him. I think it shouldn't disqualify him by any stretch of the imagination, especially since he's been transparent about his medical records. His doctor's been pretty straightforward, saying he's likely to make a full recovery. He's very fit to serve. But the actual perception of him as being somewhat disintegrated or in a point where he might not, be fully able, that's going to turn off voters.
Well, I'm wondering in this overall race between Fetterman and Oz, with the number of mail-in ballots that were sent in, and the high percentage of them were sent in by Democrats, how that will affect the outcome of this. And I think that what was also mentioned here, that the Shapiro Mastriano race is showing, different numbers, and the Fetterman Oz race is close. It would be interesting to see, of all those mail-in ballots, how well Shapiro did compared to Fetterman with those early mail-in ballots. And I think that we have the potential here that that could be a deciding factor, because the banter on mainstream media, some of it, was the fact that the debate hurt Fetterman. So if that's true, and there were 1 million paper ballots mailed in advance of that debate, then there could be, a deciding factor there that will soon be known, yes or no.
Yeah. It's a great point. It very much echoes the election of 2020 between Biden and Trump. You had obviously a lot of mail-in ballots that went to Biden. You didn't have the exact results for days after the initial tabulation. So we could be very likely looking at a similar race where Fetterman squeaks out a victory because of mail-in ballots and because of some of these more heavily populated areas that take longer to count. Yeah, I mean, it's very likely that we won't have the exact results tomorrow. It could be a couple days.
Well, and another point to mention too is that we no longer have straight party voting.
Right. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
What effect will that? What effect will that have on it? So interesting.
Yeah. Representative Millard, your long-term history with the Republican Party, there was quite a bit of reporting regarding the traditional Pennsylvania Republicans and their thoughts about the Mastriano candidacy. Can you say anything about that?
Well, a lot of feedback that I had with different events that I did, which were bipartisan events, in all kinds of social gatherings, was that there are certain areas of the Commonwealth that Mastriano would run very strong in. But a lot of people that I spoke with had reservations about his extreme beliefs. And, they felt that Shapiro was a whole lot more polished in what his beliefs were. So again, that will play out. And as chairman of the Tourism and Recreational Development Committee, the majority chairman of it in the House of Representatives, I've done significant travel this year prior to the primary and after the primary, obviously prior to this election today. And I will tell you that there were certain areas that I traveled in southwestern Pennsylvania, where it was there's no question that Mastriano will probably run strong in those areas. But there were other areas, because I've been to all four corners of the state and everywhere in between. And there were other areas of the state where the signage for Shapiro vastly outnumbered the Mastriano. Now, politics 101, signs don't vote. So you have to keep that in mind. But it's interesting, different areas of the state. And again, having just, off the cuff conversations. I'm a politician. Obviously, the conversation's always going to center around politics for the most part. And most certainly when you've got a couple high profile races underway, which the Oz Fetterman race definitely is, because national media has focused on it with regards to control of the Senate. And the Mastriano, Shapiro race, a lot because of Mastriano's ties to President Trump and, his efforts concerning that election. So there were a lot of high profile instances regarding each of those two races. But my observation was that there were some equally divided areas throughout the state, and there were other areas that were dominant for one or the other. So that's a race that I don't know. At one time, I was thinking that it would be a lopsided victory. I don't know that I can say that. I felt all along that the Oz Fetterman race would be close, and that was before it was revealed how many paper ballots were mailed in advance of the debate. So there again, you know, trying to keep up with it day by day with what's happening around you. I don't know. I think we could have a couple close races here, but well, you know, it's makes for good chatter, doesn't it? So
yeah. Well, I was really surprised. Speaking of, you know, the Republican ticket, I really thought that McCormick would have run much stronger than Oz in that primary. I was shocked. My office is in the McCormick building. When we think about the connection that name has to the state going back, and what was it? Just there was less than 1,000 vote difference, wasn't there, between
yes,
Oz and I think it would have been a lot closer race with just my opinion, McCormick versus Fetterman than Oz versus Fetterman.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And the other point too is that when you look at the number of people on the Republican side running for governor in the primary, Mastriano won on a very crowded ballot.
Yeah.
And he did not win with a decisive majority. You know, you look for a decisive majority as an indicator going in against the opposite party in the fall, and it was not a decisive majority. So it leaves room for concern. And one thing I do want to mention, because I obviously am a political junkie, so to speak, that
I think everyone who's still here at this time, we can all kind of identify ourselves as political junkies.
You know, and I just share with you, you know, with all kinds of campaigns, I'm always interested in dissecting undervotes and, you know, all of these types of things. But I also collect political buttons. And behind me in my office here at home, you can see that I've got a collage of buttons in different frames, and they run the gamut, local to presidential, both parties and every party in between. And it's interesting because you know, when I have visitors here at home and we take the time to look at them, there's always some button in there from some campaign that is a conversation starter. And as we talked earlier, that we can have different points of view, but we also have to have conversations.
Yeah.
And I found these to be links to good conversations. So.
You talk about buttons. I'm also a political button collector. One of my most prized buttons, I have a button from the McGovern-Eagleton race. I don't know if you remember that. That goes way back, 72. But McGovern's initial vice president choice was Tom Eagleton out of Missouri.
Yeah.
And he dropped out when they found out he had received EST, electrical shock treatment. He had to pull off. Yeah, we want to welcome Tim Pelton here. Tim, good to have you. Tim's been out there in the trenches all day. What can you tell us about the voting out there?
He's muted. I don't know if
Tim, you're muted.
If, sorry. Yeah, I'm muted so that I just made it home. And for some reason, my computer forced me to update Zoom before I could do this.
Yeah,
so
same here.
I've had issues with Zoom since I got this computer. I don't know with Zoom or.
Anyway, 21st century problems. So I'm having a hard time judging how good the turnout was on campus. I got some old figures here. There's a little over 1,100 people that were registered to vote there. And 264 actually voted in person today. What I don't know is how many people may have voted early. So I don't really know. I don't really know the turnout, and I might not for a while. Probably not until the election is certified. Then I'll get cat. And we're going to get photobombed here because my cat's been alone all day and he needs attention. Sorry about that. His name is Boris. He's Russian. He doesn't care about our election.
Well, that could be an outside influence there, Russian.
His full name is Boris Igor Slashnikov. He's a defector. He used to be in the KGB. Anyway, we learned he was an assassin when he decided to come in and live inside, and we realized that after about a year, we weren't finding bird feathers all over the backyard. That's how we determined he was actually an assassin. But anyway,
yeah, definitely sounds like a Putin plant for sure.
Absolutely. And he's big and strong, has all his claws and teeth, so I do not fight with him. He weighs 21 pounds, so he's heavyweight. Anyway, I mean, people are certainly enthusiastic when they came to the polls today. We had some disappointments because people didn't do what they were supposed to. So there are people who arrived at the polls today thought they could register today. Believe it or not. There was a group of about 20 people who never signed their voter applications, and we called them and emailed them repeatedly, and were never able to get a hold of them, so they were unable to vote. On the other hand, they didn't, as far as I know, none of them showed up at the poll either. So now I will, in about a year, have student voting records that will include everybody off campus, but it takes a year to get those. It's through a project at, I want to say it's Tufts University. I'm pretty sure it's Tufts. And so it's the NSLVE, and that means National Student blah, 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 which I can't remember what all the letters stand for. But they will tell us, they basically use computers to compare the voter rolls to the student information. All right, Boris, now you're going to have to get down. This is not fine. Okay, there you go. Sorry about that, guys. All right, and ladies. Yeah, and so we get an accurate count. It will even tell us, I mean, if our records from the registrar are detailed enough, it'll tell us how many people voted by major and things like that. I mean, in general, usually the way things turn out with student voting is that of all the majors that turn out to vote the most, you might think would be poli-sci or history, and it's not, it's education majors. And the worst are usually chemistry, physics, and the hard science majors.
Oh, that's
interesting.
So, I mean, we've tried and we haven't really done as good a job as I'd like because we just don't have as much help as I'd like. I've tried to do more voter drives over in Heartline to try to get those guys signed up and interested. And I mean, it's a strange thing because a lot of them are going to end up at research facilities that are funded by the government, but they don't seem to make the connection between government funding and voting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, Tim, just one quick question. You say 216 voted today.
264.
264. How does that compare to how many voted in 2020 at the same time?
It would, I mean, there's midterms and presidential elections, there's no comparison.
Okay, so more.
Yeah, like 5 or 6 times as many. I don't remember the exact numbers for and the numbers on the last one are a little weird too, because it was during the pandemic. And so that changed the way things worked for that. That one you almost have to take out and put it by itself and say it was in its own reality or something, because there's too many outside factors that affected how it worked. On the other hand, when we compared BU to all the rest of the universities and colleges out there, we were a little better than the average. As a matter of fact, we've been doing better for the last, and not just because I've been here for the last 15 years, because I didn't even do this for the first few years I was here, but every year we've been doing a little bit better. But I do think the pandemic is going to change all that. And I don't know how. I don't know if it's going to make us better or worse. There were some other universities that were doing amazing things to get out the vote that we just don't have the resources and the people to do here. But I'm talking about places like Penn. And for a while, at least, we haven't been able to get it going again this year. There was a consortium of other people at other universities, and we had a monthly meeting. And so we could discuss what was going on campuses and how we were doing things. And that was probably the most valuable resource I have. Now, there are a lot of organizations out there that help you, but they have a tendency to give you cookie cutter kind of answers to your problems.
Mhm.
And so they'll tell you, yeah, you need to do this and this and this. And it's like, well, like for instance, they say you need to canvass in the dorms. Well, we're not allowed to at BU. We're not allowed to canvass in the dorms.
Oh.
You know, so, you know, they can do that at the University of Virginia, but we can't do that here. And with a lot of these places too, they want you to come up with a plan and give it to them before, and then they kind of critique you on it and give you grades for it and then compare your grade to other universities, but they never really take into consideration how different we might be from other universities. So
The different side, yeah.
yeah, I mean, we used to do that for a while, but it just got so frustrating because I was like, well, no, wait a minute. Like, how do you want me to do this? We can't do that here, you know? And we'd have departments in other universities that have, you know, a whole bunch of people. And when I started, we had kind of the whole solve office. And there were, you know, 2 professional people, a support person, 7 undergrads and 3 grad students working there. And at times they could all pitch in. And now it's just me and 12 hours a week of an undergrad. So
yeah, you do a nice job there. We've
Yeah.
got about 10 minutes left of the show. I hate to cut you off right there,
no,
but
that's fine.
I see people looking at their computer screens. Are there any results you want to report? CJ,
Yeah, as of right now, there's been no change in the Senate results. Let me check the state. Hold on. Yeah, there's still been no updates on the governor's race either. It's yeah, so right now we're in the same boat we were in about half an hour ago.
anything reporting out of Ohio, Iowa, Tech,
Ohio,
any of the other?
I did say they called it for the incumbent governor. So I want to say DeWine is the guy's name. Hold on.
And where's that, CJ?
Yeah, DeWine. So Ohio, they had called it for him earlier. I'm now seeing that the Democratic challenger is actually up slightly, but there's only 11% reporting, so still pretty early. Senate, I did see somewhere else that Tim Ryan had a good lead, but at least right here, it's still showing 0 votes counted. So
so we don't know, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's still very early in the night, so it's very
unlikely. Totally.
Currently,
Yeah,
Tim Ryan's up by about 10%.
What now, Mason?
He's up by 10% with 32% reporting.
Okay.
Who is that now?
Tim Ryan. Yeah.
Tim
Wow,
Ryan.
that would be a real story.
I will say that was one that, looking into it, it looked very clearly like JD Vance was going to have that in the bag. So, you know, good for Tim Ryan if he pulls out a snap victory on that.
Yeah, that would be a major. There's a number of states there. How about anything out of Michigan governor race? I was really surprised to see how strong Gretchen was running in the polls.
Yeah, that looked pretty close when I was actually looking at the polling data. At least according to Decision Desk HQ, it's 0% reporting. But
how about the New York governor race?
Let me check.
That was really tightening up there.
Yeah, that actually really shocked me. I mean, I thought that was going to be an easy win for Hochul, but Zeldin was actually really far up in the polls earlier. Also seeing 0% for that, but let me check somewhere else.
New York does not. Their polls don't open or close until 9. So
yeah. That's
okay. So they're still out there. Thanks, Dylan. Yeah.
And I was looking at Columbia County's website, and for some reason my computer isn't showing any results here in the county yet. Maybe my computer, I don't know. Been having trouble with it.
Well, that's a really interesting race there. Representative Millard, you want to make any projections on that?
I think that for state representative, I believe that Robert Ledbetter will be the victor there. And I do believe that will be a decisive victory on his part.
Okay.
So, but the rest of them, I don't know. I was trying to get, you know, how many reported, and I think it's probably my computer. I'm just not getting anything refreshed.
It may not be, because the box with the stuff from the polling place on the university was probably not in the courthouse annex until 8:30.
Oh, well.
So I would guess that they haven't even gotten everything yet.
Could be.
Yeah, because they were still boxing things up at 8:15, because I contacted them because I had to leave, so I got here in time to get on. I contacted them probably about 8:15 or 8:20, and I don't think they had gone to the courthouse yet, so that I could get the final count at our polling place.
Yeah, in the interest of full disclosure, I want to state here publicly that the Republican governor candidate, Heidi Ganahl, I don't know if anybody's following that race. I was just, when I saw her name there, I thought there's not that many Ganahls in the country. I thought I've got to find out just what kind of relationship we have there. The last poll I saw in 538, she was about 12 points behind the incumbent. We are related by marriage to her husband. Her husband, Jason Ganahl, comes from St. Louis, and I talked to our family's genealogist, and he said that we are third cousins twice removed. So, but I want you to know I didn't make any endorsement in that race, and I don't know a damn thing that's going on out there. Although I did some reading on Heidi, and she did accuse the school districts. She said that there were students there that were identifying as cats, and that became a pretty big campaign issue, I think. But well, we got about 4 minutes left. Anybody want to make some wild project? CJ, should we thank you for having Oz run in Pennsylvania?
You know, I'll tell you the same thing that I've been telling people since he declared New Jersey doesn't want him either.
So he was just running around the country looking for a state. He said, okay, I'll be in Pennsylvania.
It's like he owns houses. I think he has like 2 houses in Turkey, 2 houses in Jersey, houses in Ohio. He's from Ohio, weirdly enough, which that seems like that would resonate more with PA voters. So it's from Ohio, not, yeah. But yeah, I mean, that the funny thing is, Fetterman did make that a focal point of his campaign, basically saying, totally. This guy's a carpetbagger. He's not from this state. Why would you vote for him? How could he possibly represent your values if he doesn't even live in Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Doesn't he have a Turkish passport?
Well, I believe he's a dual citizen.
Yeah, he has dual citizenship.
Yeah. I was really surprised he didn't run against Erdogan. You know, I mean, if he wanted to run for an office, he should have run for president there in Turkey. But that's a fascinating thing. Mason, what's going on? You want to make some final projections?
Final projections. It sucks. It all sucks. No one wins.
No one wins. Well, I just got an email from you. I'm subscribed to a lot of newsletters, and they all said, no matter what happens, we all win. So I think, we can. How about Chuck Grassley out in Iowa? Anybody want to make any comment? Would he be the oldest senator there?
Would he?
Yes, Lilly died. Or Pat Lilly retired, didn't he?
No, he's running. This is his 6th election. I think he's 88 or.
Wow. I'm pretty sure Feinstein's older than him, right?
I'm sorry?
I'm pretty sure Feinstein in California is older than him, right?
Yeah, maybe so. The two of them, they're dancing partners, I think. Yeah.
So one more election for each of them, maybe.
Oh, yeah, both 89.
Who was it?
Strom Thurmond?
Thurmond, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you for having me on the program again. I really appreciate it very much and have always enjoyed it. Keep up the good work.
Well, Representative Millard, we really want to thank you. I mean, we're sorry it took 40 minutes to get you here. This is always an experiment for us. We're mixing a number of different technologies. Want to thank Jake. You can see his picture there in the red shirt. And John, you can see his picture there. Both of them did a nice job in the background. Dylan Smith did a nice job. Mason, we had a number of students come in and faculty. And you've always been there, Representative Millard, regardless of what people, as you say, it's all a matter of coming together and serving the constituency. And we hope to have you back. As a political junkie, you can't stay away from these things too long, that's for sure. Yeah.
There you go. And Tim's got some buttons on his hat. I think
I
got lots of buttons on my hat. I even have Alice Cooper for president on my hat. and Dave, I guess everybody should say congratulations on your retirement.
Yeah,
well, thank
totally.
you.
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm going to join you in a couple of years, but I'm not ready yet. And thank you for the service over the years.
Yeah,
thank
definitely.
You. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I want to give a big shout out to everyone. This, I think, was a successful experiment. CJ, always good seeing you. You're a BUnow alum. Once a BUnow alum, always a BUnow alum, and a Bloomsburg grad. We really and if you want to check out a website that is totally fascinating, write this down: utterlynonsense.com. Do you want to put a little plug in here in the last 30 seconds?
Well, I always appreciate the plug, Dr. G. Yeah, I mean, so very much outside of the realm of politics, but if you're interested in nerd culture, entertainment news, that sort of thing, we do a podcast that's, pretty regular. All of our links are on utterlynonsense.com. It's me and a couple other guys who are all Bloomsburg alums.
Yeah.
Very good show.
A team of 4 or 5 BU grads, utterly nonsense. Once you get there, you'll never leave it. So very nice job there. Well, I guess we can sign off here. We'll all go grab something to eat and something to drink, and we'll watch the election returns until the morning if we want to get back together in the morning. So thanks again for everybody. I really appreciate the strong support of this forum here. Dylan, Mason, Jake, John, Tim, CJ, Representative Millard, all the others that are with us tonight. It was really a lot of fun and very instructive. So stay in touch and be safe. And I think we all can say at the end of the night, hey, we all did win at some level. So
That's right.
Thanks so much.
You bet.